Know that.
If we're competing against the basketball playoffs, this is going to have some really horrible numbers. This is the first time the Warriors have played the Lakers, which would be the battle for California, since 1991
That's who's in the playoffs?
in the playoffs. Yeah, well, right now, basketball playoffs last forever.
GI Bill is more important.
You know, I was thinking about that today. About the hierarchy of importance, and it was on. She loves me not.
Yeah.
I think I picked half of the dandelions in Mexico trying to figure out.
Nice.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit like. Don't forget to hit subscribe. And also, please hit the notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live, because we're constantly doing cross streams with other channels and adding new shows. Speaking of new shows, one of our newer shows, Pop Life, will be going live tomorrow. As usually, we've been reserving these Wednesdays for our White Guy Wednesdays. I think that's the title we're going for. I know that you guys have thrown us some really amazing and hilarious titles for what the show should be, but a White Guy Wednesday is not happening, as Jean Bajlan, the leader of the White Guy Wednesday crew, who at the census this year, I believe, will no longer be a white guy. He will officially be a person of color. But before that can happen, he's still the leader of White Guy Wednesday, and he is out of town at a conference in the United Kingdom. So Conan, Neutron, and I, who actually just interviewed, dig this, Tucson, did you see this? Conan will be my guest tomorrow, as we will discuss why grunge is not a genre of music.
Totally not necessary. It's okay. I'll save you the time. None of that's necessary. No need to
What's not
discuss
necessary?
it. There's no need to discuss it. It's fine.
Why?
Nope. We're done.
We're also going to discuss the history of the so-called genre, what helped propel it to fame, and what ultimately brought the genre down. I don't know too many young bands that fashion themselves as grunge music. I could be wrong.
New grunge is big money.
You said new grunge?
Yeah, they don't call it that, but it's like post grunge.
Post grunge? I don't know anyone that calls themselves. I'm sure someone does.
It's fading.
I played a lot of shows in the, I believe you New Yorkers call it flyover country, or that's not a real place.
A lot of shows card.
Yeah. And I played with a lot of people that still, the older people generally, that sounded very old grunge.
Which
really loved it. Really a lot of her. A lot of that.
Yeah.
Her. White guy soulish. But Conan interviewed Dave Lombardo, formerly of Slayer, of Phantomus, of Dead Cross. He was in Testament recently. But yeah, the drummer, the original drummer of Slayer, Conan interviewed him for his show. It's pretty cool. We'll probably talk a little bit about that, but we'll be doing that tomorrow. So that's why you have to hit the notification bell so you're alerted whenever we go live on all these new shows that we're doing. Also, if you enjoy what we're doing here at TIR and you are a subscriber to the YouTube channel, if you are a patron, thank you guys so much, because 2 recent videos we have here, YouTube has told us we're not going to let you monetize it.
Yeah.
Do you know what videos those are?
One of them was about the hikikomori.
Yes. The hikikomori episode.
Which we all
they said it's too hot for TV. In our Saturday show about World War II anarchist,
right,
Bonaventura Durruti and Machno. That's what YouTube said. Machno. We're not letting you guys monetize this.
Machno, get out of here.
Machno, mock off.
Get out of here with that. Brush your hair.
But and that was a show about an animated comic. So a show about a comic and feelings. Ultimately, YouTube said no, it's too hot for TV. So your support goes an extremely long way in keeping us afloat here on TIR. Remember, when you are a patron, you get access to champagne rooms past and present. You get to be part of our movie nights, which is coming up. And you get to be part of the live audience for the Pascal Robert hosted Mau Mau Hour for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours.
It's called Yarling.
I call it White Guy Soul.
That is not White Guy Soul.
That's White Guy Soul.
No, because
oh man, if you yarl, people think that's like, oh, did you feel it? I felt it. Like all those yarlers, people were always like,
oh,
this is so deep.
Oh, there's so much good White Guy Soul that is not it.
We're not talking Blue-Eyed Soul original yacht rock, because we segregate our yacht rock here on TIR. If you don't know,
it's important.
There's black yacht rock and there's white yacht rock.
Never yacht rock.
Me.
And Jason owns a black yacht. Only because he's black, the yacht is actually white.
Oh, so it's not like it's a ghetto ass yacht?
Nope.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
After the show today, MT and I will be breaking down my new favorite rap video.
Oh my gosh. Paul is going to be so sad he's going to miss it.
I think Paul should figure out how to not get in trouble with his wife. And if she wants to be a part of this breakdown, she can as well, because it's a very important piece of hip hop history, which we'll be talking about. If you enjoyed the junior high dance off for 8th grade supremacy, then you will definitely enjoy the angriest, most intense love rap I've ever heard in my life. Heartbreak rap? Was that what you'd call it, T-Son?
That is heartbreak rap. Jimmy 2 Cents says your yacht is light skin. Let's get started with the light skin jokes.
My yacht won't pass the paper bag test.
It won't pass it.
And also in the champagne room, MT Toussaint will do her best TMZ, The View impersonation, and get into why her former favorite R&B singer, Brian McKnight, is a bad dude. Why he is not Father of the Year.
No.
But he is abiding by MT's rule of black men, which is the second wife is always Filipino.
Paul is like, what? Don't ever change, TIR. Don't ever change.
Paul is like, this is why I do these shows in secret, because Bhaskar would be like, no, man, I can't have you carry the Jacobin name and be fucking with these people. Bhaskar was kind of like surprised. When he was at the New York show, he's like, oh, where's all the dick jokes?
he had index cards. He was ready.
He was ready. He was like, oh man, this guy did his homework. He actually knows. To the point, remember, he would look over at me at the live show like, well.
One of my friends sent a super chat asking Bhaskar about his member, but it was in Canadian dollars. And Bhaskar was like, I'm not answering a question like that for no Canadian dollar.
If it was in US dollars, you would. Jesus. I don't know if that's better.
No idea why.
I don't know if it's the denomination that's going to make me be like, nah, I'm not talking about What are you, weird?
What are you, crazy? Canadian dollars.
Here. Then he said, what level of patron are they at?
Right. He is a man with a sense of humor.
And they bought the poster too, huh? Well, my junk it is.
God.
There's a recent trend to look back at the New Deal and many of its programs with a simplistic binary lens. Much of this comes from the work of people like Ibrahim X. Kendi, who touts that any program, law, or policy that isn't anti-racist in its very nature is surely racist. So the New Deal, coming during the time of Jim Crow, is then by its very nature racist. So because of that, did the GI Bill actually help lift blacks out of poverty into the middle class? From our guest's recent article in Jacobin, it has become fashionable to simplistically dismiss the New Deal social programs as hopelessly racist and unavailable to African Americans. While there is no denying that New Deal benefits were not distributed equally, these historical accounts propagate a wildly misleading picture of how Black people actually interacted with the New Deal in its totality. In the context of thoroughly racist society, the New Deal represented a significant step forward for many Black working people. As scholars like Adolph Reed have tirelessly pointed out, Blacks were overrepresented in many New Deal programs like the Works Progress Administration and the Civilian Conservation Corps, where Black workers made up a larger share than their percentage in the overall population. Far from an abstract academic debate, cynical and inaccurate depictions of the New Deal have been used to try to discredit both of Bernie Sanders' presidential campaigns and the overall growing social democratic tendency in U.S. politics. There is a similar danger in ignoring the complexity of Black Americans' experience with the GI Bill. That is from our guest today, brilliant writer, union organizer, man,
Teamster cheerleader.
Teamster cheer. That's better. Pom Pom Paul. Pom Pom Paul Prescod. Please welcome Paul Prescod.
Hello. You know, to realize the reason I'm cheerleading is I'm working with the Teamsters now. But you know,
we don't know because you say you do, but you don't want to say your title. So
it's just
I get it.
Organizer. That's all. That's it.
I feel like we called you an organizer last time. You were like, I'm not an organizer.
All you need to know is Paul is jet set now. His new job has him flying all over the country with an attaché
full of nothing.
Some type of briefcase, an attaché with dossiers in it.
Yeah.
Dossiers full of nothing. All he's got in that briefcases is lunch.
Lunchables.
In the latest Jacobin magazine, of course. By the way, I learned something new tonight already. I didn't know what the Yarling was until 5 minutes ago. That was outside my universe of knowledge until tonight. So thank you.
Till tonight. Well, it's like white guy soul. It's like when you hear like the her.
So I'm just thinking
Very
about Creed, like Creed.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Big time yarler, man. Big time yarler. Who else is a yarler, Toussaint?
Whew.
Now I
There's
just
so
think
many.
probably like every white singer post 1980.
After a certain year. Yeah.
There was a lot of look, Paul, you're not joining us in the champagne room, mister. And there was a lot of yarling going on. I'd sadly, last time I was on tour, I was like, ew.
Pearl
Didn't
Jam,
know that
yeah.
was still a thing. It's a go-to vocal setting for certain singers, much like in the 80s the Taylor Dane voice for white women was the go-to setting if you wanted to impress black people at the Apollo.
Interesting.
You don't remember that?
I do.
Okay, we can
Speaking of that, not to go on this whole tangent. I know this is not what you brought me on, but speaking of white singers,
Oh, but it is.
can I just say for the record, and probably anger some people, that Springsteen is just like horribly overrated.
Ooh, shit!
I'm sorry.
That's a Paul fact. The feelings of the guest do not reflect the feeling of TIR. So any hate mail you'd like to send it to P Prescod
Send me an email.
at Sixers Rule at John.
I'll read it on my jet.
That's right.
Next to
Print
Jimmy
it out
Buffett.
and put it in his attaché.
Right.
Dan Larson used to have a bit where he would act like he was reading emails, and I was like, "Are those fake?" He goes, "No, those were real emails that we printed out."
Printed them out. Love it.
But we actually had questions for today.
Yeah.
We did.
Paul, why do you believe it's important that we get the history right with the GI Bill and the New Deal? I mean, many soldiers came back to the Jim Crow South and faced severe discrimination after serving, denied work in their uniforms, having issues with access to housing. With books like The Color of Law, where the author Richard Rothstein paints a picture of an extremely racist America, are you trying to say that none of that happened?
No, definitely not. And this is one example where don't just go by the title of an article. But in the article I talk about with the GI Bill. I think most people are familiar with it, but this is created in 1944, called the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, and it really gives a huge display of benefits that we would be shocked to see today. So you got unemployment benefits weekly that could last up to a year, and you could stagger how you use them. So you could use it for about 2 months. You could go work for 3 months and then say, well, I don't want to work this summer, and then go back and use. You still have 8 months left on your, or no, 10 months left on your GI Bill benefits. So included all of that, include access to home loans, and I think what most people know and they think about is the access to higher education for up to 4 years of college, totally free. So, I do go in the article about the experience for Black soldiers was mixed. So on the one hand, you have the home loan program. Pretty much they could not take advantage of due to the practice of the real estate industry at the time. But what you just mentioned, veterans returning to a Jim Crow society, being denied employment, being denied all these things. What you actually find if you go into interviews with Black GI Bill users and the archives is they actually remark the GI Bill still one of the few things going on from the federal government that they could experience during that time. And so I think we have to look at it and be specific what we're talking about with the GI Bill, whether we're talking about the education benefits or the housing benefits, to get a fuller picture. And there's a few arguments out there for about the GI Bill. I mean, one of them is actually that not only did Blacks not really get full access to it, but that it actually made racial inequality worse. And And so I think the most sophisticated form of this argument goes something like, white workers, they use these benefits to get a college education, to get better jobs, to get homes, and that led to all this increased wealth. And so it just led to this bigger gap between white people and black people. That's one argument of that. And I think if you actually look at it, the picture is much more nuanced. And I think one way that argument is flawed is that it looks only at college education. But the GI Bill also offered, trade schools, vocational schools.
Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Sorry to interrupt you. So you bring this up in your. So excuse me if I mix it up, because I read two pieces at the same time. I read yours, and I read the piece that came out in the New York Times probably like 5 years ago. Similarly about the same thing. It went down a much different path, right? It went down the racist path a lot more, and told more racist narratives, but it ended in the same place as yours, actually. And I think that's an important, and I think that's also kind of important that I want to cover in the show, because yours stays on point, where that one, definitely not a lot of people read 2,000 word articles.
Yeah.
Right. Let's be honest. You read the head, you read the tagline, you read the block quotes, and you pretty much get it. And if you read that from the New York Times piece, then you would just think that the GI Bill was massively racist. But again, you guys end in the same place. But one thing that both of your pieces talk about is a lack of high school educated Black people that were going into the service. Right. And you guys both talk about a push by the NAACP to get Black people to enlist because of the GI Bill, that this was going to be the equalizer, if you will. It's going to lift them out of poverty in pre-civil rights America and into some sort of middle class. And of course, I believe you write about this too. Black universities were overrun with students to the point where they would, no, we can't take anymore. And some people were complaining about being pushed into vocational training when they wanted traditional 4-year education.
Mm-hmm.
And getting pushed into unskilled labor. And these are realities of the time. This is bigger than just a bill solving all problems. The bill was never designed, and you say this, to be a sweeping reform of racism in America and do what the Civil Rights Bill would do, 20 years later?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if I could jump in. Yeah,
please,
I think
please.
I mean, there's a few things there. One of them is the problem of looking just at college education. Bill is that going into World War II, the Black soldiers that enlisted, much higher percentage of them than the white soldiers still had not completed a high school education due to, a whole number, of course, of discriminatory unequal factors. So coming out of the war, clearly, Black were not in a position like white were to take advantage of the college education because they hadn't even graduated high school yet. So if you use that as the marker, you're not really judging the GI Bill, you're judging basically the society as it existed before World War II. So that's one issue of that, that lens to look at. And you did mention, with HBCUs, it's kind of thanks to the GI Bill, HBCUs expanded greatly. Now, in a way, you could say that's good. The downside of that is they were expanding, not given the resources to really handle this capacity. But it does show you that many, many Black veterans were able to use the GI Bill. Now, the problem was in the South, they would use it at historically Black colleges and universities. But the kind of point I'm trying to make throughout this article is that people are confusing causal factors here. So the fact that Black veterans in the South could only use it at HBCU, is that the fault of the GI Bill, or is that the fault of the Jim Crow system that had been around for decades? that's not the cause of the GI Bill. The fact that Black people going into the workforce face discrimination, even if they get college education. Again, is that the GI Bill that caused that, or is that the Jim Crow system that caused that? Or I could keep going down the line. So I think this is where people get it wrong. I think real estate question is the other one. I mean, not being able to take advantage of these homes. The government guaranteed the loans, but you would have to go through a bank, and there, of course, is ready this whole system of practices to deny Black people access to housing. People are getting this cause and effect confused. So it's like, yes, the Bill, no one is claiming the GI Bill ended Jim Crow. No one is claiming it ended racism in this country. But what you kind of see, again, from the interviews with actual Black veterans that used it was it represented something much better than they had actually ever experienced before with government. And for many of them, they had a very positive experience. So from the data we have of veterans, Black veterans in the North and the South were actually used the GI Bill at a higher rate than white veterans. So there were more white veterans who didn't even take advantage of the bill. Also, Black veterans were way more likely to say this was like a life-changing legislation than white veterans were. So again, I mean, I trust that these Black veterans were adults and they understood that life, isn't perfect, and they understood that this can be a good thing while also understanding racism is and everything in our society is not fixed. But this is kind of like a positive experience that could be built on in other ways. But I think it's that causal factor, and I think some of it depends who's doing it. I think some of it is just very cynical the way they're doing it. I think why this matters. I mean, this is partly a academic debate in a sense of getting the history right, but why I think this matters is weaponized today. And it's like brick by brick, article by article, every facet of the New Deal is being dismissed as racist with no nuance, and that's all being used to build this wall against any sort of socialist or left politics. From Bernie Sanders to whatever, this history is really being weaponized current moment, which is why I think it matters to kind of go back into these historical debates beyond just an abstract academic thing.
Do you think it's trying to build some sort of avenue for more racial democracy, inverted quotes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's used to say, we can't have any hope in some sort of universalist solution. So instead, let's rework it to be some sort of Black entrepreneurial, means-tested, targeted thing instead of a universal thing. I think that's what it comes down to, is to sort of muddy the waters and kind of just, try to just really get at people's hope that we can do anything truly universal. And I'm definitely not the first to say this. I think people like Cedric Johnson say this a lot, but I always come back to why would we assume that we are doomed to repeat all the same mistakes we have in the past? We know there were certain structural factors that led to the New Deal falling short how it did when it came to race and discrimination. I mean, there's the coalition that had to be kept together. It's not a defense for it, but we know that there were structural factors that existed in the Democratic Party then that don't now. And it just seems strange to me that we kind of just would assume we are, of course, if we did it for all today, we would do it exactly how we did it in 1930s or 40s, or how we did a similar program. It's just silly to treat that as that's just fate, but it's all weaponized, I think, to kind of divert from some sort of social democratic left policy into more targeted ones, race targeted things that could be easily, made into an entrepreneurial thing. And that's why I think this history matters.
Can I ask sure.
Yeah, please add.
Ask a ridiculous question, I guess. Ridiculous for this show, which is saying a lot. What exactly? Gosh, I lost my thought. It was about the last thing. It was about the last thing you just said. What exactly is wrong with steering it away from a social democratic direction? and towards a racial entrepreneurial hustler direction. Just to spell it out.
Yeah, where to start? I mean, and I guess it's a little hard without thinking of a specific program, but I think there's a few things to it. I mean, one is like the political viability. I mean, this is a point brought up a lot about, you know, something like reparations is almost doomed from the beginning because you can't really in the coalition broad enough to actually fight for it and win it in our political system. And there's also, I mean, the fact that, I mean, it could, if there's a need that is universal and you try to address it in a targeted way, again, I don't know how you're going to maintain a majority support for that. And I think it just leaves it vulnerable to attack, similar to something like affirmative action, even when it's in a good, it's I think inherently always to being isolated and attacked, saying this is only for this certain group of people. And, you know, I mean, if you were to fast forward today, think about the GI Bill and education, for example, it's like clearly there's a need across the board with rising higher education costs and student debt. And of course, we can see that the burden, you know, it's worse for students of color, it's worse for people in high poverty. But this need is across the board. And so any attempt to address it in some sort of like means-tested way is not really going to get at the root of the problem.
I mean, reparations passed in what city is that in Illinois? I can't.
It's not Chicago.
No, it's
not.
What's the name of the city? There's a university there. Northwestern's there. Oh, Paul, what's the name of the city? You're killing me. Is Paul talking?
No.
It's somewhere in Illinois. Name a city in Illinois that's not Chicago. It's outside of Chicago.
You're exposing my lack of knowledge.
Oh my God! Look, this is what happens when you deal with East Coasters. It's just the East Coast.
It's Springfield.
I like The Simpsons. Evanston. Thank you, Bruce Carter. Bruce Carter.
That's what the audience is for.
Yeah, the audience is to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you.
They had a reparations-like program, which was extremely difficult for people to get. I forget the amount of people that actually qualified, and all you got was like 10%. No, it was less than 10% down on a house. I think it was like 30 grand to put down on a house or do remodels to your current property. But yeah. Evanston, Illinois.
And that's the other thing. I mean, what's hard with reparations right now, I mean, the term has become just like anything. So it's really hard to even know when someone says it, like what they're even talking about. It just means so many different things to different people right now. But, you know, even the version of it at its best, which would be like something to apply to all Black people across the nation, even that has its problems. But now we're seeing, I think, this more kind of like micro version that you just mentioned. That's now people are saying that's reparations. So it's becoming very just muddled what that even means to people right now. But I think the critique stands the same.
Yeah. A very muddled discussion. I mean, I find the GI Bill and kind of the New Deal discussion, you know, somewhat fascinating, because if you think about, you know, people that, you know, gained from the GI Bill, my co-host Pascal Robert loves yelling at Thomas Sowell for saying that he was had a benefit of the GI Bill, but he loves talking about how government largesse is a problem. Right. Ronald Reagan, if it wasn't for the New Deal, would be homeless, and definitely did his job to gut a lot of these programs as well.
Right.
Can I just ask for a clarification on behalf of the chat, because there's a question. When we say we want things to move in a more social democratic direction, do we mean that we just want social democracy and to stop there, or that we would like to go further left, or that we're just indicating social democracy as a direction towards left?
Yeah, I mean, when I say that, I mean that as a direction. But I think just with the realistic position that we know, I mean, given where we are right now, which is like our neoliberal hellscape, we know I don't believe we're going to have this insurrection overnight to establish communism or socialism or whatever. So I think the most realistic thing we can fight for in the short to medium term are social democratic like policies that I think are on the road to something bigger. But I think personally it's foolish to think that we could be fighting for anything else right now. I mean, we can barely win anything really. I mean, just take the Bernie platform. Imagine us actually winning the Bernie platform. It's kind of extremely hard to imagine. And yes, we could say that's just social democracy, but I think realistically, that's what we're going to be fighting for probably in our lifetimes. But yeah, I see it more as a direction, and I think we got to start something before we can think of anything bigger. Is how I look at it. So, I'm not using that term literally to mean the social democratic parties of a certain era or the social democratic parties that quote unquote sold out. I don't mean it that literally. I just kind of mean it in a general direction. And I think we should be realistic that we're fighting for reforms right now. But some of these reforms would be extremely painful, and I think would be kind of alter the structural power relations in this country. So that's kind of what I mean by that, if that makes sense.
I mean, I guess people keep asking the question. I mean, if we don't live in a democratic society, what do we live in? But I mean,
a neoliberal hellscape.
Yeah. Why is that? I guess my question is, why is that confusing? And is it the illusion of choice that makes one feel that they live in some sort of wonderful place? I mean, right now we're in a current moment where the federal government is kind of relinquishing more and more power, and you're seeing states be, little fiefdoms and doing whatever the hell they want to do. Some of this is getting challenged in the Supreme Court, but a lot of this nobody even talks about. No one talks about a lot of the things that normal people have to deal with, especially if you receive any sort of services, and then how those services are doled out by state. We're talking about federal aid that the state deals with. So,
and to be fair, I mean, since you mentioned that, and we're talking about the New Deal, that was always an issue with the New Deal as well, is that parsed out by states, and clearly states in the Jim Crow South, these benefits are not going to be kind of distributed in the South. But, I'm certainly not the first to say this, but I love saying it all the time. We're talking about the New Deal. I mean, something has to explain why Black voters, I mean, pretty much en masse, start voting Democratic after years of voting for quote unquote the party of Lincoln, meaning the party that ended slavery for us. And what explains that? I mean, the only thing that makes sense is that the New Deal is showing itself to be beneficial to many, many Black voters, and it was a very, very clear choice. I mean, that's not a coincidence. And we don't have to overcorrect and be like, act like the New Deal was paradise and act like there was no problems with racial discrimination, overcorrect that way. But I just think we should just have a realistic, nuanced picture of it. And I think we can recognize that Black people, actual Black people, recognize the New Deal as being beneficial and as being progress. That should give us hope for today that we could do something like that, but way better and without some of the structural limitations that happened during the New Deal era.
And this is interesting. You bring this up in your piece that, of course, the Times doesn't talk about, which is that the GI Bill politically activated a portion of Black America because they started to figure out how their power worked as citizens to this point about what kind of world do we live in. So let's go back in the Wayback Machine to a time that none of us, unless there's some octogenarians watching right now, can remember. So there is mass segregation, discrimination is legal. The Jim Crow South exists, and these men are starting to see some form of equality. They feel, at least, through the GI Bill. And it activates them to the point that while they're in college, they start to become organizers, and even many run for office.
Right. Yeah. And I think this goes back to like, raising expectations is a very powerful thing. And what, Suzanne Mettler, who's I'm looking at her studies and her work piece, the argument that, the experience of the GI Bill, which is very powerful, very positive for many Black veterans, it really stands out in a way in their experience with government compared to the rest of their experience with government. It helps to raise their expectations. And then many of them now going back in the job market, facing discrimination, seeing discrimination in the rest of the society, the experience of the GI Bill makes them say, well, we just experienced kind of being equal citizens with others. We just experienced this. We know this is possible. And she argues that it helped actually spur them to be very active in the civil rights movement. And there are statistics that help to show that Black GI Bill users participated in the civil rights movement at a much higher rate than non-users. And many of them went on during the period of the late 60s, early 70s, which is sort of the peak of these new urban Black governing regimes. GI Bill users were very active in these electoral campaigns, these electoral administrations. And, I think the argument makes sense that, if you start experiencing something better and your expectations start getting higher, disappointed, I think you are more likely to be spurred to action, because partly you see this is possible. You can't tell me we can't do this when the government just gave me 4 years of free education or gave me a year of unemployment benefits to do what I want with. Once you experience that, it's hard to go back. So I think that is I think that it was a powerful argument, also showing that many of these veterans were active in NAACP, other organizations active in the civil rights movement. So, and that's another thing that should give us hope, that I think that if we can start winning things in this country, I think actually does lead to a cycle where people are going to fight for more and more and more, which is going back to why I always think it's kind of silly to be like, well, why are we only talking about social democracy? But I think we have to start winning that or something like that to even feel we have confidence to fight for anything more. I think it's hard to just go from nothing to everything.
Well, a little social democracy would go kind of a long way in this country.
Right.
I mean, if there was some sort of socialized medicine, or even just free college at the junior college level, that would go a massively long way.
Right.
In this country.
Reparations first.
Reparations. But first. I'll need my check.
Which I will then spend on medical care.
Right. I was about to say, it's funny how it's like a check going towards free education wouldn't count somehow. But
yeah. The whole thing is like fascinating to me. Like early on in this show, when it was just me at the studio, I was doing a show and someone was mad at Bernie Sanders because or they didn't like Bernie Sanders. They said he didn't have a Black agenda. And so I literally asked, well, what's the Black agenda? They were like, well, free college. I was like, well, I think he talks about that.
Right.
Free college. Are you kidding me?
I'm not. You can go back and listen to it.
Where are these questions coming from?
Somebody brought it up to me recently. There's a patron. You get a phone call when you're at a certain level of patronage, and someone reminded me of that conversation. I totally forgot about it. They reminded me.
Adolf Reed tells the story of, on the campaign trail for Bernie, every meeting there would always be at least one Black person who would ask that question, and his answer was always just going down the program and saying, how is that not an issue that disproportionately affects Black people? And he would say, when it came to normal people, usually that answer made sense, but of course the operatives, they would never accept that as an answer. But it's interesting. Even I think good faith people feel the need to like ask that or think about it that way. I don't know. It's hard for me to understand sometimes, but
that conversation definitely has been muddying the waters, I think, since 2016, and that for me was kind of the turd in the punch bowl for 2016 that just never goes away.
As Paul takes a drink. Jesus, Jason.
I know, right?
What the hell, man?
Sorry.
It's a little spicy. A little spicy.
Like, I didn't put the turd in the punch bowl. I was trying to stop him. No. Everybody loves the pow. I can't drink it now.
But it's also a way, it's a strange way of just like looking at Black people as being totally isolated from every other development. I mean, take for example the, things that will come up about Black patients, how they're treated by doctors as opposed to white patients. And and one answer to that is, and I remember Bernie saying this, like, well, we need Black doctors, but also guess what is preventing a lot of Black people from becoming doctors? The cost of higher education. And it's like, I can imagine if we had free higher education, we probably would have more Black doctors and medical professionals in general. But it's like, if you think about Black people as just being isolated from any other economic development, you're not really going to see it in its totality. But that's a weird thing to do.
But Paul, that's still a thing, that piece hit a lot of people really hard. And then the whole Venus or Serena, I forget which Williams sister, went to the hospital and the doctor was like, "You're fine." And she was like, no, I'm sick. And she ended up, having a serious, I think she was even pregnant. She had a problem. And that New York Times piece, I forget how many parts it was. It was kind of a multi-part New York Times piece about the treatment of Black females, and then went into mortality rates. One thing they didn't really get into was Medicaid, and what Medicaid really is, and what it's always been, which is kind of a band-aid of healthcare for the indigent. And to not take that into account and have it be this strictly race debate. Again, if we're sitting here talking about how do we get social democracy, at just the very least, how do we get this small win? Well, it's really hard when you have these massive think pieces in the New York Times that get adapted into popular culture that just become the narrative.
Right.
That medicine at its very core is just inherently racist.
Yeah. And I think they try to add like academic heft to these arguments by going back to these historical interpretations of the New Deal. I think it kind of all starts there. Once you start sowing doubt in that project and writing that off, I think that allows them to then write off any sort of proposals for today that might mirror that in any way. So, and again, to be clear, I'm not saying we overcorrect and act like the New Deal is just like totally flawless, but I think we need to paint a realistic picture and actually show what it was really like, and go into the Black political dynamics of what led the Black political forces to align themselves with the New Deal, because they're getting something out of it.
I mean, Toussaint, you've been a Black woman for a few years now.
A little while.
A little bit. When you go to the doctor, do they is it just like, "Oh, hey Keisha," you're like, "That's not my name."
That's the wrong chart.
There's a new Netflix short with Alfred. Is it Alfred Woodard's in it? I believe Alfred Woodard's in it, and it's made by a young female filmmaker, and it's literally about a young woman that has a miscarriage, and it's a short. It's like a 23-minute horror story, and I watched it, and I immediately called Toussaint when it was over. I was like, I wanted to like it so bad, Toussaint, but it was just so unrealistic. And I get it's supposed to be a horror movie, but it's like, come on. Like, the doctor didn't, after she has a miscarriage, the doctor's like, didn't know her name.
Oh gosh.
I was like, Jesus, what hospital are you going to?
Patient X.
Yeah, with Sherry Sharifa. I know it's long.
Sharifa.
It's got a law in front of it somewhere.
There's a hyphen. I don't experience that. I mean, I as a Black woman experience what I believe other women also experience when they go to the doctor. Maybe it's a little bit worse. Depending on the doctor, I often see Black doctors.
Do you
Um,
are you that person? Are you like, I don't want any of these Italian doctors on my wall?
yeah, get these Italian doctors off my wall.
Black doctors on the wall. If George Washington Carver's fucking third son ain't in here to look at me,
George Washington Carver's third.
if Cliff Huxtable ain't in here to look at me,
Maybe not Cliff. Maybe not Cliff looking at me.
is he the most famous black doctor? Like Ben Carson kind of lost that title, huh?
Oh, Ben. He's known
Oh,
as other
Ben.
things now.
But seriously,
Yeah.
what do you experience? Like, all jokes aside, this is
People are dismissive. It's all in your head, that kind of thing. That happens, but I imagine that happens to other women as well and other marginalized groups. I don't imagine a white man walks into the doctor and is like, "Hi ho," and everything's just like wonderful for him.
Hello.
Hi ho.
So that's the Arling. Hi-oh.
That's early.
Yeah, he walks in there and yarls. It burns when I pee.
And then everything's fine.
Yeah, everything's fine. It's like, oh, it's just a little soap in the pee.
A little soap.
You don't need medication. You're good. You Medicaid? Oh yeah, you're totally fine. Just get out of here, please. Please leave. Don't
Get
touch
out of
me.
here, champ. You're good.
Punches him on the shoulder.
Gives him a lollipop. Yeah, I don't imagine going to the doctor is terribly fun for a lot of people anyway. I don't know. It's hard to say. How can I know?
And look,
You
I'm
have to
not.
yeah.
I was just saying, again, I'm not even disagreeing with the idea that there should be more black doctors and more every doctor, but it's like, again, let's look at what would actually help that the most. And I think if you're not about like free higher education, given how insanely expensive it is to become a doctor, you're not really serious about addressing that as an issue.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure there are definitely plenty of people who would have excellent bedside banners who were prevented from becoming doctors every day.
So you would be like soul plane of doctors?
Well, like, particularly if you
that's
have
social
something
democracy
like
to me. That's
soul plane of doctors.
Soul plane of doctors.
That's an excellent unit of measure. Also,
soul
by
plane
the
of
way,
doctors,
a soul plane of doctors.
soul plane of landlords.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, you'll have union labor that takes the soul plane, but the pilots will be
That's right.
unionized.
When I had my first child, we were at the hospital, and of course my friends were there because I'm a child, and I figured, dude, you gotta have your bros with you. So we were all there, and the doctor came in, and he was a black dude with dreads. And I just remember my best friend looked over and was like, I don't know if I trust this dude.
I don't know if he washed his hands.
Yeah, it's like, we can't have Lord of Mercy coming in here.
Being the doctor. You see that? You see that? That's something we're going to have to deal with even after the free college.
Yeah. The internalized racism.
I love the idea of like of a unit of measurement, like not like acres, not hectares, but soul planes.
So, yep.
I mean, the doctor did look way too calm. I was like, dude, we're all freaking out over here, and you just walked in like you just hit the biggest spliff here.
Oh, come on.
Can't have Dr. Madism delivering your child.
All we do is spark madism.
All we do is spark. Yeah, we can't have a doctor that just dropped the hottest 16 and just really fun. Trying to
And that we call lookism. Bernie Sanders needs a policy for that.
Yeah, because I totally
lacking.
Bernie, what's your black agenda for when I racially profile my black dreadlock doctor?
I believe we need a soul plane. Can you just imagine Bernie saying a soul plane? What a soul plane?
What?
I've
Oh, s-
talked to Cornell West. He told me about we
Can you
need
imagine Cornell?
how
West.
come 80% of the soul planes are owned by 2% of the soul plane pilots?
Cornell West. When I talk to Brother Snoop,
Oh my gosh. My good brother, my dear brother.
my dear brother Snoop, put down the blunt, smack foes.
God.
I didn't know we would get here.
I
From
know.
Marlin to the GI Bill to Soul Plane as he uses
The yarling of the GI Bill. Oh, I need some rights.
Oh man.
Oh, we just lost all our white viewing base over 40.
I know. I'm sorry. When I said that Bruce Springsteen shit, I probably just like ruined.
Oh, the 50 and ups told us to go fuck ourselves. There you go.
I'm sorry. I
You
just
gotta
don't
get into his
see it.
catalog.
Look, I appreciate he was like pro working class and all that, but the music, I don't see it.
Do you hate John Cougar Mellencamp as well?
I'm not that familiar with his.
He's the one that talks about sucking on a chili dog.
He just doesn't say the cougar out of spite. It's just John Mellencamp. That's it.
John Cougar Mellencamp. I never understood his success.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I remember I was like a small child watching MTV and his music would come on. I'm like, is it just because he's white?
Isn't he the one with a little ditty by Jack and Diane?
Yeah, little ditty. When I sing this song, it sounds like I'm sitting on the can.
Oh my gosh. It's funny because it's true. But yes.
No, it sounds like someone I wouldn't like. Just saying that.
You don't like turd singing?
He's
I already got
big
a turd in my bowl or whatever.
That's right. In your punch bowl.
Yeah. I'm just trying to have my
gonna...
evening punch, and as I always do.
No, Paul.
Paul,
First come for inside the house.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
So yeah, the GI Bill was good. It was
Yeah. It was decent.
it was pretty good.
Some good things.
And now we're gonna watch a soldier's story.
Or a soul plane story.
So as a unit of measure.
Yeah.
Just bought a new house, 400 soul planes wide.
That's right.
Remember when Dave Chappelle had the reparations show or the joke?
Oh right.
And
Yeah.
that black woman said, I bought a fur house. That is a soul plane right there. The fur house.
The fur house.
Oh my God. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, everybody that tuned in to a serious show and just saw us totally crap.
We had a good like 10 minutes somewhere in there.
We did a good
Minute like
spread out.
27 to 37. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul started it. Can we admit that Paul started this all by
Paul did start it.
totally crapping on America's own Bruce Springsteen?
Bruce Springsteen.
Can I say that one since I'm just gonna keep this too long.
Uh-oh.
It's not that I don't like him. Don't get me wrong, but again, when talking about overrated, Bob Dylan's a little overrated.
Ooh,
Wow.
shit.
He got a
Again, I'm
Pulitzer
not
before.
saying he's not good. I'm just saying, does he deserve to be like worshipped? No. Now, have I listened to like everything? No, I don't know.
That's illegal.
I mean, look, Paul, there's a few things you can say around white people and they won't get mad. Bob Dylan's overrated. You have to be around the hippest of hipsters to get away with that.
Maybe this will make Umar Johnson.
So you think, and then Umar Johnson's like, man, and he just fucking pulls out vinyl.
Right, you probably listen to Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen every night.
Have you seen? There's a comedian. I wish I had it up. I would play it. There's a comedian. I want to say he's from your hood. I think he's from Philly. He's a young black comedian. And he said someone told him something along those lines at a party. One of his white friends said that Bob Dylan was the greatest lyricist of all time. And of course, the dude laughs, and then he says he goes into Bob Dylan's catalog and starts listening to his music, and then goes, that guy said some, dope shit. And then he said a verse, and everybody was like, yeah. And he's like, that's not Bob Dylan, that's Jay-Z.
That's funny.
I thought that was fucking hilarious.
Nice.
I am not. I'll be with you, Paul. I will not let you stand alone. I'm ambivalent to Bruce Springsteen. I just don't care.
Yeah.
It's a
His
sound.
sister is in Sleepaway Camp too.
Of course you know about his sister.
Pamela Springsteen. Yeah. Jay Coleman says Bob Dylan says the N-word more than Jason.
More than Jay-Z. More than Jason.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Oh man. Can I just say
yes.
R.I.P. to a legend, Gordon Lightfoot. I recommend him, Paul, if you'd like to listen to a white man with some musical chops.
Okay.
Gordon Lightfoot, go for the hits. You'll understand.
All right.
He passed away yesterday.
Oh, what was Gordon Lightfoot's? Sing me a couple songs.
No.
Can you hum me a few bars?
Early Morning Rain. I was just listening to that.
Well, can you hum it for me? How's it?
I don't think that's the tempo, Jason.
Everything is stay. At TIR, everything's jazz. We just scat everything.
Jazz tempo.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, early morning rain. Hey, get that duty bat down.
N-word.
Get that duet N-word.
That's the J. Cole remix. Boy, love using that word. We know you black J. Cole. It's fine.
Look, can you hum me how this song goes?
No. No, I cannot.
And that's how you destroyed the patriarchy.
That's what she said.
Wow.
I didn't even know you had that button. I've never heard that
on the
one
wrong
before.
bank. I was on the wrong bank. But
Oh.
yeah, I do have. I have two more banks. I have the live show bank
Oh.
and the champagne room bank.
You got
Paul,
banks.
thank you so much for hanging out with us. It was a lot of fun, as usual. I
Always.
definitely.
Yes.
I don't think I've said this on air yet, but I miss you on Saturdays. I know it's been like 3 years since you've been a consistent Saturday contributor, but man, we had so much fun.
Right. I mean, I can't commit to every Saturday, but I should come back here and there on the Saturday. Let me know.
You hop off your jet.
When you're not jet setting around the innards of America. No, I miss that. Of course I miss Marcus. Marcus just got too overwhelmed. If people want to know where he's at, I get tired of ignoring the question. Marcus got entirely too overwhelmed. There is a lot of reading to come on this show.
There is. Oh my God, is there a lot of reading?
That's why.
Not to say that,
so I can avoid reading someone else's shit.
you can avoid the reading, so you can say, "Hey, nigga, I wrote something."
Right.
Right.
I read what I wrote.
I read what I wrote, but
but yeah, I would love to have that back again because that was a lot of fun. Angela too. She hit me up actually not too long ago.
Did
Okay.
you?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I
Everybody.
think of coming to America, think about Schmiga's, and I think about TIR. I think that was the first sound episode.
Somebody said, "Whoa!" Saying Marcus can't read. No, Marcus can read his black ass off. Marcus told me one day. He goes, "Look, nigga." He goes, "I read all this shit 45 minutes before."
Nice. Nice.
No, but yeah, we have to have a reunion show soon at some point as we are hitting our
Yeah.
4th year anniversary of me deciding to take this long and windy road down to Podcast Town.
The anniversary is in September.
October 19th was the first episode I ever did.
Wow.
Who would have thunk it? It would lead me all the way
Yeah, man.
to Mexico.
On that,
But thank you.
oh, can I tell you a story real quick?
Oh shit! You know what? Let's do this for him. Bam.
Oh, story?
Go.
No, I mean, I want to see his reaction to this. I was telling Tucson, I think the last show you were like, yeah, you should come and visit me in Mexico. And I told my partner about it. And she's like, oh, I didn't know Jason was in Mexico. Then she goes, what is he running from? Because I don't know.
She said that shit's so smooth too.
Right. It's very natural. It's just like, oh, where's he running from?
Huh.
The rent in California.
That's a good enough reason why.
That is exactly what I'm running from. No, I would love to tell a real story, but no, the government knows exactly where I'm at. So don't you guys ever think I'm running from anything. They let me know real. I'll tell you, I'll send you a message, Paul. But yeah, the motherfuckers know where I'm at.
Okay.
They reminded me too. Just in case I forgot.
They're like, we are watching TIR.
Yeah, they were like, they were asking me questions like, oh, what's the weather like down there?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Like, did you like our super chat?
And then Kush takes off his mask and if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Nice.
But yeah, thank you, Paul.
All right,
and
thanks for
tell
having
your
me.
girl, can you please tell her I said I'm not running from anything?
I will.
Because you can't run in a country where you can be extradited.
Let's get that wedding date set.
Yeah.
You can do it in Mexico.
I'll let you know.
Are you serious?
It's going to be in Barbados.
Oh, you're keeping it real.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's
Keeping
exciting.
it real.
So,
are you Barbadian? Is that what I would call you?
Bayesian.
yeah, well, my father's from Barbados. I was born in the U.S.
But can we call you Barbadian?
Yeah, or Bayesian. Bayesian is the word.
That's just too on the nose for you.
Oh, God. Wow. Wow.
But now I know what I'm going to call my kids as well.
There's levels to this.
Because my kids
I
are
mean, I got to give you credit. You've been very few light skin jokes throughout, and this is a record low number. So I'm glad to see Jason is doing the work,
Inside, right? Get that internal work done.
Every time I see my children, I'm like, there's so many jokes.
God.
Good hair having ass kids. And on that note, guys, please join us in the champagne room if you think this was fun. Oh my God. The video,
plans.
Tucson and I all night. What was it? 2 nights ago. Couldn't stop laughing at this video. So I'm very excited. I'm so sad Paul can't see it because Paul loves hip hop. This is going to be a hip hop centered champagne room. So I'll send you the link,
Wow.
Paul, so you can see it later.
Yeah.
And you and your
Makes
girl
sense.
can laugh your asses off at this song. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. And we are
Bayesian.